This is Doug Huffman's story of frustration. When we hear the word vandalism, we might picture a few broken windows and spray paint. Huffman had to deal with much, much more. Holes kicked in walls, electrical components pulled out, plumbing lines broken, water damage. More discouraging was the plea deal that let the man responsible out of jail, a man who has now been arrested for murder in Kootenai County. This is Doug Huffman's story. Welcome, Doug Huffman, for this interview. I understand that you have a building that has suffered some severe vandalism in January of this year, and the fellow who was caught on video, I believe, doing that damage has been in jail, but was recently plea bargained out. Is that the situation?
Yes.
Okay, well, we have some of those photos. We'll add those to the background of this conversation at that time. How did you find out about that event?
How did I find out? My wife and I were enjoying a dinner in Scottsdale, Arizona on a Saturday night, January the 8th, as to be precise. And I received a call from Spokane Police Department, and they informed me that my building had been vandalized, sustained a lot of damage, and they had the individual in custody. And one of the first things they asked was if I would want to be pressing charges. And it didn't take me very long to answer that question in the affirmative.
And the building was in the middle of a sale. So one of your concerns was that you were going to lose the sale because of the damage.
Well, absolutely. The building was scheduled to close on the 12th. So 4 days prior to that event, this takes place, and they described the damage to me. This individual had broken into the building going through the roof, and he had broke out a number of windows. He had broke water supply lines, so there had been water running in the building. And I know what the weather conditions were at the time, and the policeman told me that I would have to make arrangements to get the building sealed up, secured. And I'm 1,400 miles away. And fortunately, he gave me the name of a couple of contractors that do that sort of thing. And I was able to secure one of them to go in that night and at least button up the building. And from that point forward, I became a project manager. I had to ascertain the damage.
So you had to become a project manager to not only get it buttoned up, but to get the repairs made. And how much did the repairs cost you?
The numbers are still in process, but I can tell you in excess of $30,000.
That's a significant chunk.
Yes.
Yeah. So you were able to get that closed up. Did the sale go through?
We were able to negotiate and extend the closing date for 3 weeks. And during that period of time, it became my responsibility to get as many of the repairs done as possible, leaving the buyer to handle what remained. As an example, windows are 3 months out, the supply windows. So obviously that was not going to be able to be replaced in that period of time. But yes, we were fortunate. I I spent 3 weeks, a lot of long days, an awful lot of phone conversations, reaching out to get different folks lined up to go in, assess the damage, give me bids, perform repairs, get the buyer online so he was aware of what was happening, and try to keep this train moving forward. And we were able to do it.
Yeah, and I had an email here where you had made mention of the nature of some of the damage. I think it's easy to dismiss vandalism as, just some innocent little tagging with paint, which doesn't sound like very much, but this was way more than that. You had described it as roaming room by room, punching and kicking holes in walls, pulling electrical components out of walls, kicking in walls, damaging the plumbing system, ripping out water lines. Really some pretty major stuff. Did the buyer have a hesitancy about going ahead given the damage that was done?
I'm sure he did. But at that point, he had so much invested insofar as I think he was very passionate about the building, and he wanted to see it, see the sale take place. And
so what neighborhood are we talking about here?
What neighborhood?
Well, I didn't want you to necessarily give the address, but where in general was this located?
About 4 blocks east of Division.
Okay, right in near downtown.
Right in the middle of the U District.
In the middle. Okay, well, right in the middle of the U District. That's an area we'd hope would be a safe spot for students. And maybe we're going to have to be a little more careful about that. So this fellow was arrested and charges were pressed, and he was in custody, but then he was just recently released on a plea deal. Did you get any calls? Were you kept informed of how that prosecution was going, or of the plea bargain?
Oh yeah, very interesting conversation. Interesting conversation took place about a week after the incident. I received a call from a gentleman who introduced himself as a victim's advocate, and he explained to me that they would like to get my input as to what I would like to see take place, and he was going to put me in on a conference call with the prosecutor, who in short order got on the phone, and almost immediately they remanded me to not be so aggressive insofar as reaching out to try to find out information about this individual. When I got his name, I started doing research, and I went to the city, the police department, and asked for any and all details regarding this incident. And apparently that came up on their radar, and they told me that I should really be careful doing that, because if this thing ever went to trial, the prosecutor could paint me as a contaminated witness. And I thought that was rather an odd perspective. But nonetheless, I said, I understand, but I also don't think this thing is going to go to a trial. And I pretty adamant about that. I said, I believe you will cut a deal, and that's how this thing is going to be put to bed. But that was the first conversation I had. And then subsequently, just prior to his first hearing, they gave me a heads up that it was going to take place on such a date. And then that was delayed for about a week. I subsequently haven't had any conversation following the hearing, which took place last week. I found out just looking online on the review in the record section what took place. So when I looked at the online edition for the review last night, I about came out of my chair when I saw this incident that had taken place out at Heiser and at Hauser Lake. And lo and behold, it's Adam J. Bennett. So,
Yeah, I'm sure that was something of a shock. Probably a little scary for some folks to know that that plea bargain resulted so quickly in such a tragic event.
Well, it was tragic, but considering the fact that this gentleman, if I can use the term loosely, had a rap sheet as long as your arm, and he had pending issues with Kootenai County. That was noted in the report in the paper. So he's been in and out of the system, peers, et cetera, et cetera. So this thing is going to be a slow moving train. This issue, interestingly enough, I was born and raised in Spokane, ran a successful business for 25 years out of Spokane, sold the business 10 years ago. And I've always enjoyed going back to Spokane during the summers, especially. And I've noticed the change. And I sat down and composed a letter to your mayor, Nadine Woodward. Yeah. And I made mention of the fact that I didn't understand how this was allowed to happen, all these homeless people congregating around, and how the city allowed the Catholic Charities to put in these facilities. And I didn't get a response from her, but I did get one from Bob McCannon. I think I've got the name right. He's the president of Catholic Charities. And he more or less said, these individuals you're talking about that are loitering around, these are people's brothers, uncles, cousins, fathers, sons, etc. And, they need a place to congregate, needed to be able to go indoors to a bathroom, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because my take on it is they don't need to use my property for that purpose, however. And not only are you housing individuals, but you're also inviting a lot of individuals to congregate around the neighborhood, because I'd seen cars parked on Pacific, just one block off of 2nd Avenue, and it was obvious that there's nothing more or less than a dwelling for these folks. So I thought that was rather interesting that 3 months later, my building gets hit again, and this takes place. And I started reaching out to people in the city there, and lo and behold, I'm one voice of many that are saying, enough is enough. Something has to take place. This can't go on. I was in Spokane last week on an unrelated business and took a walk downtown on a Monday morning. I was astounded at what I saw. It's shocking. And as I said, I love Spokane. I've got my latest issue of Nostalgia magazine and the Business Journal. I haven't got to read them yet, but I like to keep in touch with what's going on there. But
it's a tough situation, because there's those who are they're up to criminal activity, dealing drugs. There's those are homeless for other reasons. There's a lot who struggle with mental illness, and we're not doing a really good job of identifying and addressing all of those. I know Rob McCann. I know he's right. Every one of those people is part of somebody's family, but so are you.
Yes.
And
So am I. And, I didn't create the problem, but I was certainly been affected by it. And from my perspective, there's an industry now whose livelihood is predicated on working with these folks.
Yeah, that's been brought up before. It's sometimes called in the homeless industrial complex, and not in a nice way.
That's put it in a very politically correct way. Yes. So they have an incentive, and I'm not sure that their goals are aligned with mine. But in any event, the 3 weeks that I had to spend trying to reverse all the damage that this individual had done indiscriminately was a big chunk out of my existence. I've never been victimized like that before, and it wasn't pleasant. Thank God I was able to reach out to resources that I had developed in Spokane over the years, and was able to get accomplished what we did. But I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It would have been tough enough if I was in Spokane and this happened, but imagine trying to direct traffic 1,400 miles away. And that building meant something to me. I absolutely love that building. My wife and I had envisioned at times converting it to a residence. It's just a great building. The architect had built it back in the late 70s. Wonderful building. And that's one reason why I'm sure the buyer hung in there, because he could see the potential of that building and the location and all that's happening, with the U district. There's a lot to be said for it. But not everybody looks at it the same way, I guess.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today, Doug. I think we all have to remember there's multiple sides to these issues, and I think we have to take care of folks who are homeless, but take care of the people who are the property owners trying to keep things like the U District alive and thriving. Means we've got to have some accountability as well as compassion.
And you got to stop that revolving door at City Hall. And
stop the revolving door in and out of the jail. Yep.
That could be part of the issue. Yeah. So, well, listen, thank you for your time.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, ma'am. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.